What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another episode, an unfortunate episode. The Denver Nuggets, they fire Michael Malone and they don't bring back Calvin Booth on a renewed contract. Both of them have been released today as of about 2 hours ago in a seismic NBA shifting move. The Denver Nuggets move on from Michael Malone after 10 years with the Denver Nuggets franchise, the best coach in franchise history, the winningest coach in franchise history, and the only coach to lead the Denver Nuggets to an NBA title. He's gone. The Denver Nuggets have lost 4 straight games. The defense has been floundering all season. They did not have the personnel. They didn't have the people. They didn't have what they needed in order to win this year. Let me know if y'all can hear me in the comment section, please. Let me know if y'all can hear me. I know AJ said he can't hear, but let me know if y'all can hear me. The Denver Nuggets, man, in one of the most surprising moves in franchise history, they get rid of their head coach and GM with 3 games left in the season, right before the NBA playoffs, y'all. This is just asinine. I have told you and speculated that I think Calvin Booth is going to be fired this year. There are several reasons why. As reported as of last summer, Ramona Shelburne, there had been instances of disagreement between Mike Malone and Calvin Booth. It had already come to a head behind the scenes where the two had philosophical disagreements on how the team ought to operate, who should be on the team. The Nuggets have one of the youngest benches in the NBA. They continue to add more young players and late first-round picks and second-round picks to the roster to be able to somehow keep the team afloat when the starters are out of the game. Now, I have already shared with you that I think that philosophy is not going to work. I said that if you're going to go the young route, why would you not simply just go the young route by adding valuable high-end draft picks? Trade those draft picks you have, move up into the draft, into the lottery. Do it that way. And that way you actually have assets to use and build around. But instead, Calvin Booth decided the best way that he wants to build the team, the best way you want to build the team is to have players that play defense, that hit shots, that are two-way players on the roster for Denver. And the Nuggets simply don't have enough players that do one of those things at a high level. Everything is on the table. I want everybody to know that now. Everything is on the table. When you make a move like this and you take this kind of step to rid your roster of the winningest head coach you've ever had and to rid the roster of the GM that led you to an NBA championship, you're basically acknowledging and saying that by any means necessary, we have to improve. And I think Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, Julian Strawther, Hunter Tyson, Jalen Pickett, everybody that's on this roster, everybody is on red alert. The simple fact of the matter is, y'all, one of the reasons why I think this happened is, and I said this on Locked On Nuggets, if you didn't see the show, we already did an hour episode, Matt Moore, Ryan Blackburn, and myself on Locked On Nuggets in the entirety of this thing. But the reason why that I think this happened right now is simply because of this. In the last month, the noise around this Denver Nuggets team has gotten very loud. The noise around Jokic's season has gotten louder and louder. The noise about how disappointing this team is has gotten louder and louder. And so when you're in a situation where you have a player playing this well in Nikola Jokic, having maybe the best offensive season ever, and you're barely scrapping maybe 40, maybe 49, maybe 50 wins this year, that's a problem. That cannot be the case. But the Nuggets, because of Calvin Booth's direction, were in a place where everybody around the NBA acknowledged the roster wasn't good enough. And yet, they made no adjustments to the roster. Now, think about this. Calvin Booth last offseason said verbatim that they wanted to retain cap space. That way, if they need to add shooting or a player at the trade deadline, they'll have the ability to do so. Did they add anybody at the trade deadline? Matter of fact, I was told that a month prior to the trade deadline, Michael Porter Jr. had been taken off the table as a trade discussion because they wanted to keep him, which is okay. So then are you going to bolster the bench by adding another young player, just a free agent flyer, a shooter, a defender, anything? Knowing you need assistance, knowing you need help? No, nothing. So this is the issue. They're in a situation where they're struggling as a roster because the team isn't good enough, because the GM didn't do enough job. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm just really flummoxed about the Michael Porter decision. I'm flummoxed about a lot of the decisions on the roster and what they've done. I'm going to share this with you. I want y'all to see just how inept the roster building with this Denver Nuggets team has been over the last 2 years. Take a look at this. So this is from Andy Bailey. And Andy Bailey shared a graphic detailing all of the information, all of the trades and moves that Calvin Booth has made. And wouldn't you know, it's very suspect. It's a lot of questionable decisions that are on this list. Take a look at this, y'all. Let me go ahead and go full screen here. So the summary of the Calvin Booth transactions and signing KCP and Bruce Brown. He traded Bones Highland and 2 second-rounders for Thomas Bryant. And then didn't retain Thomas Bryant. Thomas Bryant didn't play at all. Wasn't good enough. They traded a 2029 first-round pick and draft rights to Maxwell Lewis for draft rights to Julian Strawther, Hunter Tyson, and Jalen Pickett. And I would argue that none of those players are contributing to this team winning this year, except for maybe Jalen Pickett. Bruce Brown, he couldn't resign. Jeff Green left on a deal to Houston. Thomas Bryant just walked. Reggie Jackson, he signed Reggie Jackson to a 2-year, $10 million player with a player option on the second year. He signed Zeke Naji to a 4-year, $32 million deal with a player option. Traded the draft rights for Ryan Dunn, the 28th overall pick, and 3 second-rounders for Deron Holmes, who got hurt, so that's TBD. Allowed KCP to walk for nothing. Allowed Justin Holiday to walk for nothing. And then traded 3 second-rounders and Reggie Jackson for cash considerations and to dump that contract, the contract that he signed. And then he signed Dario Saric to a 2-year, $11 million deal. And Dario's played 15 games this year and fell out of the rotation for the Golden State Warriors last year. And then Russell Westbrook gets a 2-year deal with another player option. He's given player options to Zeke Naji, Reggie Jackson, Dario Saric, and Russell Westbrook. For what? And then Jamal Murray signs for a 4-year, $208 million deal. So the things that have left this roster, Bruce Brown, KCP, Jeff Green, Reggie Jackson, Thomas Bryant, Bones Highland, Justin Holiday, Ryan Dunn, Maxwell Lewis, and 8 second-rounders and 1 first. And in what they've gotten, so for 8 second-rounders and 1 first, they got Dario Saric, Russell Westbrook, Julian Strawther, Hunter Tyson, Jalen Pickett, Deron Holmes, and cash. What are we doing? And I told y'all this last summer, it didn't make sense. I told y'all in the regular season this year, the plan doesn't make sense. I told y'all when you drafted a bunch of young players, the plan doesn't make sense. You don't have enough defenders. You don't have enough shooters. And then Calvin Booth last summer said, we have 9 real guys on our roster. The starting 5, Russ, Dario, Peyton, and Julian. Only one of those guys right now is playable for this team in Peyton Watson. He said last summer he understands that where the three-point volume has gone for the NBA. But out of his mouth himself, he said, Nikola Jokic should not lose an NBA playoff series because of three-point shooting. Across the board. And then said the reason you want to keep room available, don't go over the second apron with KCP. Is so you have flexibility and then you don't use the flexibility to improve the roster over the course of the season. Why? Because you give Jalen Pickett and Hunter Tyson guaranteed roster spots. Your decision. And then from there, you take Porter off of trade talks because of how well he was playing. And then from there, the reason you can't resign KCP and stay underneath the second apron is because you re-signed Zeke Naji to a 4-year deal worth $8 million a year when you didn't have to. The issue is, and I've had a conversation with other media members about this, it is not the fact that you made one mistake. Everyone makes mistakes. It is not the fact that you made 2 mistakes. The issue is that all of your mistakes compounded upon themselves to lead the Denver Nuggets to where they are now. An all-time great year from Nikola Jokic and maybe the worst year of any Denver Nuggets year, period. They had more fight in them in 2021 when Murray and Porter weren't on the roster because they had to fight every night. This team is 2 years off of a championship, and they're in a worse spot last year and a worse spot this year than they were last year. It doesn't make sense that these are the decisions that you made. I and others criticize those decisions, especially me, knowing what this team needs on the roster to be successful. And then nonetheless, the decisions are made, and now because of it, Michael Malone is out of his job. Matt Moore asked me directly on Locked On Nuggets, do you believe that if the team was better, if there were more players on this roster, that Michael Malone would have been fired? I said vehemently no, because there would be no reason to do it. Even if you would have said that the defensive personnel was the defensive scheme was struggling, they got to adjust it in the offseason. Well, if you give him Nickeil Alexander-Walker like I told him to, Chris Dunn like I told him to, re-sign KCP like I said do, the team is in a different place. The issue is Calvin Booth purportedly was making decisions that other people disagreed with within the organization, and thus here we are. Michael Malone is the winningest head coach in the history of the organization. He led 2 3-1 comebacks, led them to the Western Conference Final for the first time since 2009, led them to the Western Conference Finals in their first sweep in 2023, led them to an NBA title, led them on a 16-4 playoff run. When Jamal Murray tore his ACL, got Jamal Murray back on the train, told him he wasn't trading him, and they locked in. Developed Michael Porter Jr., developed Christian Brown, developed an offense that led the NBA the all-time best paint offense in NBA history. Led that because they didn't have the three-point shooters around them. All of that stuff put together, and Michael Malone gets canned because of the fallout of the general manager who we all looked at and said, what is the plan? What are you doing? It didn't make sense. We said it didn't make sense. And I remember Matt and I got an argument. Not an argument. Discussion. Heated discussion. A passionate discussion. And just a couple weeks ago, he was like, what do you want us to say? You were right about Dario Saric. Like, you got to let it go. And my whole point, no. There is no letting it go. It's not like don't forgive him before the Lord. Like, it's not like he's damn. Like, it's nothing to do with that. It's about your job. Your job. You told us. You told us, the media, in the media room, you are the steward of Nikola Jokic's prime years. You said that to us. You said that to the fans. You said that to the league. You said that to every team in the league. You're the steward of his prime. And you know who else you said that to is Nikola Jokic. You said that to Joker. That I'm going to do my very best. And this is from the Cronkies, not just the booth. The Cronkies included. You promised Jokic, we are going to do our best to make sure your prime years are not wasted. And what did you do? The next 2 seasons. You know what last year happened? You were up 20 in game 7. I believe they would have beat the Celtics. They would have beat the Mavericks. They lost to a team that was constructed to beat them. Whatever. But the next year, you saw what happened. You weren't rebounding. You weren't rebounding. You didn't have enough shooting in game 7 around Jokic and Murray. So what do? Nothing. Nothing. You add Westbrook. But Jokic wanted Russell Westbrook. So this is what I'm trying to understand from a philosophical standpoint. Why would you put the team and yourself in this situation? To me, it doesn't make any sense. And Booth deserves the criticism. And I'm not going to be coy and hold my tongue about it. He deserves the criticism. This is not the way that you promised things would go. This is not how you build a contender in 2025 with a team with this many defects on both ends. You don't have the shooting. You don't have the defense. What are we doing? The team going forward, the GM and the head coach, whoever sits at that seat and applies for that job, number 1, 2, and 3 at the top of your board is, how do you plan to maximize the final prime years of Nikola Jokic? What are you going to do to make sure they're in contention every year? And who are you going to target? And how do you plan on getting there? 1, 2, and 3 at the top of your job description. And whoever is able to do that the best, that's your job. It doesn't make sense otherwise. We've already wasted enough time. Jamal Murray, it's not his fault. It's probably going to be hampered in the playoff for the 4th year out of 5. Jokic has not had his second best player healthy in the playoffs for the 4th year out of the last 5. The last 5 MVP years from Joker. Jamal has been hampered in 4 of them. And now you're asking him to go into another playoff setting with a defunct roster, with no shooting, with no defense, and everybody else. The way the criticism works, Joker lost. Joker needs to be better. Booth, you're watching a player get 61, 10, and 10, 41, 13, and 14, 38, 17, and 15. You're watching him average 30, 13, and 10 on 63 modern splits, 42 modern splits, 80 modern splits, and the team isn't good enough. Even though you said to him, I am the steward, this is my job, I'm going to get it done. And it's the way you went about your business to get it done that didn't make sense to me. And this is not about Swipa, but you were right. I don't care about that. And you shouldn't care about it. You in the chat shouldn't care about that. What you should care about is, I told you, as well as others, what the blueprint was for this team, and you went the opposite direction. And for what? because you believed that you could break precedent over everybody else in NBA history and getting 25 to 29-year-olds on the roster that are two-way players or that can shoot. You just said, no, we don't need it. And now, thus, here we are. Michael Malone fired. Calvin Booth not being brought back with a contract extension. This is what we suspected could happen. And look, I love Malone, y'all. This is my first year working in the NBA as an official media member was the championship year. Malone has been a class act. Malone answers questions. Malone is very forthcoming. Malone is honestly, relative to other coaches I've been around in the NFL level, at the high level D1 football level, in the NBA, he honestly is so transparent and so human. Just last week, Michael Malone, during a timeout, one of the kids that was there requested that he help her shoot the free throw. And when she made it, he celebrated as if that was his own child. Like, Malone is beloved in Denver and should be. He's not perfect, but he did something no other coach has ever done in the history of Denver. Doug Moe, George Karl, Byron Scott, Jeff Bezelic, none of them. Michael Malone. He did it. And now, in part because the time might have just ran its course, but in large part because the GM who was responsible for curating and developing the roster on this team didn't do his job and did it so poorly that even in this year, the Nuggets might not win 50 games. And everybody knew the roster wasn't good enough, except for apparently one person. So it's frustrating, y'all. I mean, for Nuggets fans, this has been an entirely frustrating year. There's probably been one stretch of basketball this year where people actually were like, man, this team is good. We're locked in. Outside of that, it's been a dogfight. And Michael Malone, he's out because of it. Calvin Booth, as we predicted, is out earlier than we thought. And now we're 3 games left in the regular season. The playoffs are just around the corner, and the Nuggets have an interim head coach and no GM. That is weird. Last offseason decisions have led up to this point. So it's frustrating. The Denver Nuggets, we'll see what they do from here. There's over 4,100 people in here listening live, so shout out to you all being here. This is obviously a very shocking day for everybody around the league. I think everybody expected for Booth to be gone, which I think shows the level to which people thought he was at as a coach this season. But unfortunately, y'all, this is just the name of the game. You don't do your job, this is where you go. But y'all, make sure y'all like, share, and subscribe. If you want more content, make sure you listen to Locked On Nuggets. Matt, Ryan, and myself did a great show over there. Make sure to shout out Liv Moves with Gorilla Sports. She did a show on this as well. DNVR also did a show on this. So you got plenty of people to talk content. This is at the national level. This conversation is going as well. So y'all know what time it is. Swipa gang. Y'all my folk. See y'all on the other side.